What's going on, everyone? What's going on? We're here. It's the first day of Black History Month and February 1. But for us as black men and women, we know black history is every single day. It's not just one month, it's not just one week, it's not just when we're allowed to celebrate our history. Black history is something we live by. Black history is something that tells us who we are, tells us where we're at in this moment, in this generation, black history. And so, the start of Black History Month, I want to take back some black history that's ours, that's been erased, that's been kind of overlapped. And that is the concept or the belief that Jesus was white. And up until I was about 22 years old, I did not think it mattered what color Jesus was. I always would say, hey, it doesn't matter if you're white, Asian, Mexican, black. The concept is still the same because we're living by spirit now. We're not caught in this physical. There's no longer Jew nor Gentile, whatever type of talk you want to talk about. That was my mentality. Is it really does not matter what color Jesus is, as long as we get the message. I knew that the foundation of, that the foundation of the rock Christ talks about is his words, his message. So I never had an issue with the coloring, but I realize it's very deadly. It's very dangerous to have that view because not only do most of us have a view of a white Jesus, most of us don't even have a picture or an image if we closed our eyes right now that we could really think of a black Jesus. You could think of a white Jesus though. That's been ingrained in our head. It's the white, blue-eyed, blonde hair, brown hair Jesus. The reason why it's dangerous is two things. One, it's just incorrect. It's just straight up incorrect. In the year 2200, if they started painting pictures of LeBron James and they were painting pictures of him white, it would just be incorrect. Not only would it be incorrect, it would also not make sense. It just wouldn't make sense. So when we see pictures of Jesus being white, not only is it incorrect, it doesn't make sense. The Hebrews were not white. The Jews at the time were not white. All those people who were living in that part of the world, Judea and Israel, Jerusalem, down to Egypt and Saudi Arabia, all those people who are living in that part of the world are black people. So unless you randomly had a white person get born within these tribes of Israel, unless you randomly had a white person get born within these tribes of Israel, that's just incorrect. So then it becomes a question of, well, why do we have to have an image of Jesus that looks like the people who oppressed us, who look like the people who enslaved us? And when they came over, they were presenting this person to us. They were presenting this person, this incorrect image of a savior to us. You have to deal with that as a black person. A lot of black people, black Christians, we don't want to deal with that aspect that there's some connection between what we were given and the position we got put in. That position of submission and subservience to this race of people who has a savior that looks like them. Okay? So Jesus being white is just an incorrect thinking. If you have that mindset of your savior looking like your oppressor, because here's what I'll say. In slavery, you guys, we weren't allowed to own our children. We were not allowed to own our marriages. We were not allowed to own books. We were not allowed to own money. We were not allowed to own our sexuality. We were not allowed to own our hair. We were not allowed to own any property. We were not allowed to vote. We were kept out of business. We were kept out of education. We weren't allowed to do any of these things, but they gave us Christianity. The thing that now a lot of black Christians say this is the most important thing in the world. So while you were enslaved and you couldn't have family, you couldn't have love, you couldn't have relationships, you had to get told when you could mate and have sex sometimes. Young men have to get locked in houses at nighttime so they wouldn't run away. If you run away, you could get killed, you could get murdered, you could get replaced, you could get sold, your children could get sold. They take all of your life, your culture, your religion, your language, your family unit, they take all of that away from you. But you think that them giving you Christianity, they were doing that for your best interest? You guys, I had to deal with this. I had to deal with this about 23 years old. About 5 years ago, I had to deal with this. I had to really deal with the fact that I can no longer view them giving us something for our good or for our benefit. I can no longer view that what they gave us with their version of Jesus, their version of Christianity, was for our benefit. You can't convince me that that was for our benefit when at the same time they simultaneously took away your family, your children, your wives, husbands, killed off the parents. Because that's another thing, is at some point you, as a black descendant of slave, which I am, my family is, many of my brothers and sisters and family and friends are, just descendants of plantations, descendants of slaves in this country. At some point along the line, your ancestors were murdered or killed over the political positioning that blacks were going in. At some point in time, it does not matter if you have Native American ancestry. When you read of the Native Americans and how they would go out, they thought it so they thought it was so bad to be killed by a white man, they would kill each other before the white man killed them. When they realized that it was over, okay, the women and children have been killed, it's just us warriors left, they would kill each other before the white man killed them. They were like, we just to the death with this. But slavery is not an option. Now, there were those who were captured. There were those who were sent away. There were those who survived in slavery. We are the descendants of that. We're the descendants of everybody who survived, who made it after the wars. There were wars in Europe. That's what allowed Christopher Columbus to come over here. There's wars in West Africa. That's what allowed the whole slave trade to get going. There's wars over here on this land with the Native Americans, the black Native Americans and whites. Black Native Americans were fighting with themselves. They were fighting with different countries. But all of these people live on through us. We are the combination of all of these people now, the black descendants of slaves in America. We are the combination of these people. My ancestry, we have writings in my family where they talk about the Native American in the family, the people who spoke Indian languages, and then they speak about the people who come from Africa. But my family's both. It's Native American on this land. This is why when we talk about black Americans, we're not a people who just came from West Africa. This is why we have a different mentality than anybody in the world, you guys. Black people have a different mentality than any people in the world. When I was in Seattle, I was talking with a girl. She's from Somalia. She's from Somalia. She was born in Somalia, moved to the UK and Europe, and then now she was living in Seattle. And she would always be saying, you know, the rest of the world, they don't look at the U.S. the way black people do. You guys look at it as, you know, it being bad and treating you guys wrong and stuff. And the rest of the world looks at this as a great place. And we would always tell her, me and my friends would always tell her, well, the rest of the world is wrong. The rest of the world don't know what they're talking about. Because we are people who've been here before the country started. We know what the agenda and goal is of our enemy. We have other people come over here who aren't even aware we have an enemy. They deny the fact that we have an enemy. When we talk about white supremacy and racism, I have black people who are immigrants tell me there's no such thing. A few years ago when I started this channel and I was speaking of white supremacy, I had black people tell me, you know, the white supremacy is over, like that's all KKK stuff. And then you see Trump, and then you see what happened the last couple of years, and now those same people are talking about white supremacy now. So you got to be ahead of it before your enemy's talking about it. You got to know your enemy before your enemy approaches you. There's a white doctor. I'm going all over the place today, and that's fine because I'm letting it out right now. It's the start of Black History Month. We're getting some stuff cleared up, and we're letting it all out. There's a white doctor by the name Dr. Jacqueline Borton. She's a white doctor, Dr. Jacqueline Borton, and she talks about the start of race in the 1600s and says there's no way that, you know, white can really mean anything good because it was always, the original creation of white was to be above black. That's the only reason why white got created. They got created at the same time, white and black. Before that, you had your nation. You were either a part of France, you were a part of Portugal, you were Portuguese, you were Spanish, you were a nation. Then it turns into either you're Christian or Muslim. When you get to the U.S., they create a system called race where now you're white or black. White or black. And white is going to be given privileges, be led into education, led into economy, and black will not be. White people know this. This is why you don't let white people play dumb with you about not understanding the history of racism. They know when white was created, because there's a time in this world where white didn't, it wasn't because you're white this. Because you're white, you can't go to education. Either your culture and your people are sophisticated enough to do it or they're not. Okay? So, white is something that was a created concept. And the fact that we're creating a white savior or worshiping a white savior in our minds, that's deadly and dangerous for the truth. That's not true. That's not honest. As I said, if you painted LeBron James white 200 years from now, it's just incorrect. It wouldn't make sense. You're talking about an NBA that's ran by black people, and then there's a white person who just ran the whole NBA and was better than everybody else. It wouldn't make sense. So when we're talking about Christ, you got to cross all that white Jesus stuff out of your mind. All of it. I'm not saying you have to give up Jesus or the Savior or the concept of the resurrection. You don't have to give up Christianity in that form. This is what I had to go through. I had to realize you don't have to give up Christianity in that form. You have to get rid of all the lies with it. And one of the lies is that your Savior, the person who you wait on to come back for you, looks like the same people who kept you enslaved for a couple hundred years, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Every black church, if you want to have a picture of Jesus, you have a picture of a black Jesus unapologetically. You have a picture of a black Jesus, someone who looks like you and your people, because your God is supposed to lead you and your people from wherever you are at. And if you don't want to have an image of God, don't have an image of God. But right now, I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what black church you go to, they all have an image. When they close their eyes and pray, or they show up at church and they think of Jesus, they still have a white picture in their head. I don't have a white picture in my head when I think of Jesus. I have black pictures in my head when I think of Jesus. I have pictures that look a lot like me when I think of Jesus. Black people. I'll tell you a story that sums everything up. I went to a white church with my sister. It was a Presbyterian or Anglican church. It was one of the two. It was in LA, over there, Westwood area by UCLA, and my sister was speaking. She was basically promoting. She works at a shelter out there, and she was promoting what the work was they were doing. This was around Christmas time. And so we go to this church. The church is this big castle, nice area. I mean, big streets, nothing but nice Teslas and Lamborghinis out there. It's a beautiful city. And we walk into the church, and this is the first service. There's two services. This is the first service. We walk into the church, about 50 people, all white. So all white congregation, at least at that first service. My sister and me were probably the only blacks, and there was one black wife of a minister who was visiting. And so, it's only about 3 of us there. And they're going through this slideshow throughout the whole worship is on the screen. Like there's a nativity scene slideshow. They have Jesus when he's being born in the manger. They have the 3 wise men. They have pictures of all of these things, significant moments when Jesus is calling Lazarus out the dead. They're showing all these pictures on the slideshow. About 8 pictures on the slideshow. The very first picture on this slideshow was a black Mary holding a black Jesus. It was a black Madonna and child. This is the very first picture at an all-white church. Now, let me tell you something. You guys understand how white people move. If that was incorrect, there is no way you would have the start of that slideshow be a black woman carrying a black child at an all-white church with that type of money. That was a very educated, rich... And see, they were so educated, they knew they had to honor the truth. They have to honor the truth that Mary's black and Jesus is black. They were that educated. No white people were offended by the fact that it was a black Mary. So I was like, oh, they know this stuff. This was years ago. I'm like, they know this stuff. They understand that the original Mary is black, the original Jesus is black, the whole concept of the resurrection comes from the Africans. They understand that. As I started studying it deeper, you realize that all over the world you have these images of a black Mary and black child, and that Europeans, white Europeans, change the story and make God fit for themselves. You black people don't have to give in to their version of it. You don't have to give in to their form of it. But you're going to have to know God for yourself. You're going to have to study God for yourself. You're going to have to peel back some layers of stuff you were taught. If you want to keep going to that holy of holies, you want to keep going closer with God, you got to go for it. You guys, the biggest thing I can tell you is that there's no high priest between you and God. Myself included, the minister included, the elders included. You guys, I've lived my life. I've had different times where I did not do stuff trying to honor different people within church structures, within leadership structures, different things like that, when I knew God was leading me a certain way. There's no high priest between you and God. You don't have to wait for somebody else to go and talk to God for you to know what you need to do. You definitely don't need to wait on white people to tell you or approve of your Christianity in a certain form. Your Christianity, that's not even Christianity. Your Christianity is supposed to be straight from within, straight from the voice of God, and you're moving with it. You don't need nobody else to tell you nothing at all. All right? That's true Christianity, so we got to take that back. Black History Month, you guys got to take Jesus back. Jesus was black. That's all there is to that. Jesus was black. Mary was black. The people, because see, once you take back your God from them, from the culture which is oppressing you, the culture which is oppressing, when you take back your God, you say, okay, well, what else did y'all give me? Y'all have given me a culture and a lifetime of pain. You've given my ancestors a culture and a lifetime of pain. And see, we justify it in our mind by saying, well, at least we have Christ. At least we had Jesus. You got to take back the true form of Jesus. If you want it to be powerful, you cannot live in a lie and expect to have the power of the truth. This is why I tell all of you guys, a lot of you guys, it's not even about you questioning anything. You guys already have the questions. It's about having the courage to actually live by what you believe. Live by the truth you guys are seeking out. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. All Black History Month, we're going to keep coming with these facts about black history, especially when it comes to Christians in the church. Jesus is black, the Hebrews are black, the Israelites are black. All of the wars that are happening at that time are black. You guys, Abraham goes into Egypt. This is the first time we know of Abraham, even outside of the Bible, is when he goes into Egypt. This is the first time we really see that there's a man named Abraham. He goes into Egypt. Him and his people going to Egypt. Genesis chapter 12. The moment they leave Egypt, it says that he was blessed with money, blessed with cattle and servants. He goes into Egypt. He's just a small little group of people. They leave Egypt. They balling out. Both times this happens. Every time he goes into Egypt, he's balling out when he comes out of there. To the point where him and his nephew got to split up. So what we see is Egypt is the first nation we really see in the Bible. Before that, you see different tribes. You see Cain and Abel. Cain has to go somewhere. You know, like you see those type of things. You see Noah and him saving his family and the other people. But the first nation, empire you see is Egypt. Egypt. Kemet. K-E-M-E-T. Kemet. The land of the blacks. The land of the black soil. The word chemistry comes from Kemet. Alchemy comes from Kemet. You guys, there's no other nation in the world that has a study on a country like Egyptology. You don't get a Jamaicaology, you don't get a Canadiology, you don't get a Haitianology, you don't get a Brazilology, you don't get a Nigeriology, you don't get a South Africaology, you don't get an Australiology. You only get Egyptology, because from this place in the world, civilizations are cultivated. The understanding of religions are cultivated. This is the only place where they created a whole study of a country. This, like, you can go to college and study this country. I'm not talking about the history of Egypt. I'm talking about Egyptology, the study of who these people were, the culture of these people, the religion. There's writings they cannot translate to this day. And as Egypt and Kemet was attacked, you see the Kemites move. You see the Kemites move to West Africa. You see the Kemites come to America. You see they're all in the Colorado Rocky, the Grand Canyon underneath there. They found artifacts of Ramesses II living there. Egyptian colonies that were living there. We know that they were living in the caves of Arizona and Nevada. We know there were black people living in the caves there already. But they found artifacts. They found Egyptian artifacts all up over America, from Mississippi all the way to California. So we see that these ancient Egyptians moved throughout the world. When the French general Napoleon goes into Egypt, he's looking at the pyramids and he's looking at the temples, and he's like, wow, The same people who we're enslaving in the U.S. are the same exact people, they're the same group of Africans who built these pyramids, who were at one time the leaders of civilization all across the world. Because remember, forever Europe was trying to get into Africa, they couldn't get into Africa. You guys, we're going to break down this church history stuff. I know I'm going too fast right now, so I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to actually cut it off right now. I'll be back on here tomorrow, and we'll talk more about this church history. You guys be smooth. Take back your black Jesus. Just get rid of. There should be no white Jesus thought concept in your mind. If you're doing that still, you're just going by their form of Christianity, and you're not honoring truth. Okay, so you guys got to deal with that. Be courageous enough to deal with that. And remember, when you honor truth and when you honor truth, you're honoring God, and then God will honor you back in return. All right. Y'all be smooth. Y'all be good. Y'all stay safe. And remember, Jesus is black.